Sometimes scientists uncover truly extraordinary archaeological finds, which simply cannot be explained. There are countless movies and documentaries about ancient Rome. We are impressed by the size of the empire. However, what do we even know about her? About its real history? Did it really exist? And if so, when? Let's find out. The official date of birth of Rome is 753 BC, but it is believed that the city appeared much earlier. During its long history, the Eternal City has changed its appearance many times, and many ancient buildings still preserve the memory of the former greatness of the Roman Empire. However, is it really so, or are they just ruins? Today we will consider the history of the most famous empire, the Roman Empire. Almost everyone knows about it, because how many movies and legends have been written. Today we will consider inconsistencies with real history. We will consider old monuments, ancient writings, and in the end, the most interesting thing, we will look at the maps, where the Roman Empire is simply not depicted. Although according to modern history it should have been there and flourished. In the age of informatization, it is easy to find an answer to even the most complex question. However, it would be a deep misconception to think that modern science knows everything about the ancient world, in particular about the Roman Empire. Everything that we know today about ancient Rome has reached us thanks to the works of Titus Livy. I think many people know about the merits of the ancient historian, but what do we know about his personality? Moreover, in principle, not much. It is known that he was born in the area of Venice, and then ended up in Rome. He had at least 2 children, and there are still minor facts about his life. Without studying the works of which it is impossible to get a complete picture of the history of the ancient world. Livy wrote a 142-volume work covering a full 7 centuries. But it is surprising that of all the books that have fully survived to our days, it is only his first 10 volumes, where the rest of the collection of works disappeared to, is still unknown. Perhaps, putting all the books together like a puzzle, we could see the real picture of ancient Rome. But what we have is what we have. Old sources, accidentally burned, and immediately new originals are created before our eyes. Almost everything we know today about the past of our civilization is based on sources from ancient Greece and Rome. However, few people know that most of these materials are just forgeries. Why is this so? Only copies printed in the Middle Ages 15th and 16th centuries, and supposedly carefully ripped off from the originals have come down to us. However, what happened to the originals? Most of them were simply destroyed, but their copies were carefully preserved for posterity. A sane person's question immediately arises: why were the originals of ancient documents destroyed, mostly as heretical texts, while their exact copies were carefully preserved and reproduced for study and use? The answer is obvious. The copies were no longer a danger to those who carefully destroyed the original ancient texts. And what else we could learn? If even a part of these books had been preserved, it is scary even to imagine. We all know the magnificent Roman architecture, the Colosseum, the Capitol, the Pantheon. But it is disconcerting the complete absence of ancient inscriptions with dates. On the walls of numerous cathedrals, palaces, churches hang only tablets with dates in the chronological system accepted today. You are told that this cathedral is 500 years old, but the plaque is nailed only in the 19th century. No old dates. Who built it and how? Constructions of such complex, mathematically precisely calculated architecture were built by slaves and soldiers of Roman legions. We are constantly told about it. Say, wild barbarians, captured by civilized Romans, built these amazing masterpieces of architecture, which today's builders are unlikely to be able to repeat. And besides, ancient Roman buildings are amazing in their size. Already mentioned Colosseum, Pantheon, St. Peter's Cathedral, triumphal arches, differ simply huge sizes. Here, for example, the Roman Pantheon, one of the most mysterious buildings in the world according to history. It is at least 1,000 years old, but interestingly enough, it has never been renovated over the years. From an engineering point of view, the Pantheon is an absolute masterpiece. A huge sturdy structure built of unfathomable mysterious eternal materials. Modern historical myths say that Rome was founded by twins Romul and Rem. In infancy saved from certain death by the nurse and Capitoline she-wolf, which today is one of the fundamental symbols of the Roman Empire. It is logical to assume that this statue was made in those distant times, because already for other post-Roman cultures, it would not have had such great significance as for the founder of the city. But surprise it wasn't. The statue of the Capitoline she-wolf that is now in Rome was placed there by order of the Pope in 1407 Tidri. Surprisingly, as we can see, the statue suddenly resurfaced only in the Middle Ages, and even by personal order of the Vatican. And the symbol of Rome's founding, a bronze statue of a she-wolf with two human babies, turned out to be about 1,700 years younger than the sacred city itself. Scholars have long established that the bronze figures of the boys were not added until the Renaissance. However, until the 1909 to Stephen Restoration, no one had serious doubts about the authenticity of the she-wolf herself, until one of the restorers noticed that the she-wolf was a monolithic casting, a technique that only came into use later, in the Middle Ages, whereas in antiquity, complex bronze statues were first cast from separate pieces and only then soldered together. So why forge a statue of a she-wolf and date it back to later centuries? But this is not the only find in so-called ancient Rome. Trajan's column, carved directly out of marble and covered with magnificent carvings. What could possibly be wrong with it? Strangely enough, there is not one inscription on the column itself, not a single mention of a name, not a single name. The only inscription is on the plinth. By the way, it is curious to compare the condition of the plinth in the 19th century with its appearance in the 20th century. It can be seen that in the 20th century the plinth was visibly restored. The fact that there are no inscriptions on the column itself already raises a number of questions. Apparently, the bas-reliefs of Trajan's column really followed some old tradition. It is indicated by the following striking fact. On many shields antique Roman soldiers, Ottoman and crescents, stars and Christian crosses can be seen. Well, later, as it turned out, the Trojan column was erected not earlier, but even later than the second half of the 13th century. Crusades, that's what the masters of the construction actually depicted. And here's what one of the researchers writes. As you can see, bas-reliefs are perfectly preserved. The hand of time, corrosion has not touched them. It speaks about one single thing. The column is at most 500 years old, really about 300. I myself have seen stones of Palaces, which are 500 years old. Corrosion was very much visible, and it was granite. For such a long period of time, the bas-relief should have turned into a shapeless mass. And the column itself is made of Carrara marble. It is from Carrara marble was created the majority of buildings and sculptures in the 1718 centuries, and not only in Italy, and in many parts of Europe. Speaking of Europe, let's just look at the map of antique Europe, created by the world-famous cartographer of the Middle Ages, Ortelius. This map depicts ancient Europe, which means that the map shows it no later than the 5th or 6th century yet. And what does this map show? There are no Western or Eastern Roman empires on this map, and according to modern history they should have been there and thriving. Moreover, here is another map, by the same cartographer, and again surprisingly, on this map there is no Western or Eastern Roman Empire. And now, let's look at a fragment of a map of the 16th century, from the collection of the Spanish royal court. The author of this map, unfortunately, is unknown. As we see, the fragment depicts the Bosphorus Strait, and on the northern part, clearly visible inscription Rome. However, where did Rome come from in the 16th century? After all, as we know from history, it disappeared 1,000 years before this map. Moreover, in the common understanding, did the Great Roman Empire exist? Perhaps it did, but the other question is, when? Well, maybe there's another story that we're just not being told. What do you think? Send this video to your loved ones to let them know the truth. And don't forget to subscribe, because there is still a lot of interesting research waiting for us.